The grand hall of Zephora's royal palace glimmered with light, each crystal chandelier reflecting 1,000 colors. Aliens of many shapes and sizes moved gracefully through the room, their costumes bright and shimmering. The air was filled with soft music, the kind that made hearts beat faster and conversations lower. But among all this beauty, Captain Elias Grant felt like an outsider. Humans were rare on Zephora, almost like stories in a book rather than real beings. Elias was tall, with broad shoulders and sharp green eyes, his uniform simple compared to the alien finery around him. He had been hired as a mercenary mostly for security, but tonight he was here as a guest. Well, that was the plan. But Elias knew better. Trouble had a way of finding him. He moved quietly along the edge of the hall, keeping an eye on the crowd. Zephora's capital was usually safe, but there were whispers of unrest. Political rivals and jealous nobles sometimes sent assassins to make their points, and tonight the guest of honor was none other than Princess Lyra, the queen's only daughter. Elias had been briefed, protect the princess at all costs. Lyra appeared at the top of the grand staircase. Her pale skin glowed under the lights, and her long silver hair fell like a river behind her. Her dress shimmered with tiny lights, almost like stars. She smiled at the crowd, her voice melodic as she spoke a few words of greeting in the alien tongue. Elias studied her carefully. She looked delicate, but he could see intelligence and courage in her eyes. Then, without warning, chaos struck. From the back of the hall, a figure darted forward, moving faster than the eye could follow. Elias barely had time to react. The assassin carried a blade that glowed red, a weapon designed to cut through armor and bone alike. In one smooth motion, the figure aimed directly at the princess. Elias lunged. Everything slowed in that moment. He didn't think. His body acted on instinct. With a powerful push, he threw himself between Lyra and the blade. The weapon struck him in the shoulder. Pain exploded, sharp and hot, but Elias didn't cry out. He gritted his teeth and held the line. The crowd gasped, a mix of shock and horror. Aliens froze, unsure what to do. Lyra's eyes widened in fear and then surprise as she realized the human had saved her life. Elias twisted his body, trying to block another blow. The assassin hissed, then vanished into the crowd as if swallowed by the shadows. Security forces rushed forward, grabbing the intruder, but it was already too late. The moment had passed, and the damage to Elias's shoulder was done. Elias fell to one knee, feeling blood warm on his chest. But he didn't let go of his grip on Lyra's side. "You're safe," he said, his voice low but steady. "I've got you." Lyra's hand touched his arm, light and trembling. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice was quiet, but Elias could feel the weight behind her words. Gratitude, relief. Something else, curiosity. Queen Valara arrived just moments later, moving swiftly down the staircase. Her robes shimmered like liquid gold, her expression sharp and commanding. She saw Elias kneeling, his chest heaving, the blood staining his uniform. Her eyes widened for just a moment and then narrowed with focus. "You," she said, pointing at Elias. "You saved my daughter." Elias struggled to stand, feeling the pain in his shoulder like fire. "It was instinct, Your Majesty," he said. "I'm trained for this. That's all." Valara's gaze was steady. "No, you risked your life. Not because you had to, but because you chose to." She took a step closer, her eyes locking onto his. "You are different from the others. Humans are not like this." Elias wanted to brush off her words. He was just a man who did what needed to be done. But somehow under her gaze it felt different, important. "Are you hurt badly?" the queen asked. Her voice softened just slightly, but it carried authority. "The palace medics will see to you immediately." Before Elias could respond, attendants guided him to the infirmary. The room was clean, sterile, and filled with alien medical devices he didn't understand. A humming scanner floated over his shoulder, analyzing the wound, and a strange gel-like substance coated the cut. Pain faded quickly as the alien medicine worked faster than anything he had seen on Earth. As he lay there, catching his breath, Lyra appeared at the doorway. She leaned against the frame, her silver hair catching the light. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Elias forced a small smile. "Better than I deserve. That blade, it was meant to kill." Lyra's eyes widened. "And you stopped it. You saved me. I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," Elias replied. "Just stay safe. That's enough." She shook her head. "No, I want to understand. Humans, you're not afraid. Not like we would be. Not like anyone here. Elias paused. The truth was, he was afraid. He always was, but fear didn't control him. It never had. Humans had a strange way of facing danger, and somehow it often worked in their favor. Before he could answer, Queen Valara entered the infirmary. She approached Elias slowly, her eyes serious. "You will stay here," she said. Elias blinked, confused. I have a mission." No," she interrupted. "You are not leaving, not yet. My daughter's life is not yours to risk again. You will remain at the palace as her protector until I decide otherwise." Elias blinked, his mind racing. "I'm a free agent. I don't work for anyone long-term, especially not in a palace full of politics." Valara's gaze hardened. "You may be a free agent, but you have proven your worth. And more importantly, you have proven your loyalty. That is something rare on this planet, human. You will stay. For her safety, and for mine." He felt the weight of her words. This was not a request. It was an order. And in the palace, the queen's word was law. Lyra stepped closer, her voice quiet but firm. "Captain Grant, thank you. I want you to stay too. Not because my mother said so, but because I trust you." Elias looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time he felt a connection deeper than duty. She wasn't just a princess. She was brave, intelligent, and capable of seeing him for who he was. And he realized in that moment that perhaps this strange planet and its people were more than just another job. He nodded slowly. "All right, I'll stay. But don't expect me to follow every rule. I have my own way of doing things." The queen raised an eyebrow, but there was a hint of a smile. "We shall see." As night fell over the capital, Elias sat by the window of the infirmary, staring at the glowing city below. Lights shimmered like stars, and ships moved gracefully through the sky. He had no idea what challenges awaited him in this palace full of secrets, politics, and danger. But one thing was certain. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he belonged somewhere. Somewhere that needed him. The palace was quiet the next morning. Golden sunlight spilled through tall windows, lighting the marble floors and glimmering tapestries. Outside, the city of Zephora buzzed with life, ships moving in the sky, vendors shouting their wares, and citizens walking beneath arches that reached like fingers toward the clouds. Inside the palace, Captain Elias Grant was awake, sitting on the edge of a soft, alien-style bed in the infirmary. His shoulder had been treated with the strange alien gel, and the pain had mostly faded, leaving only soreness. He flexed his arm carefully, testing his strength. It would take a few days to fully recover, but he was usable. The door opened with a soft hiss. Princess Lyra stepped in, her silver hair brushing her shoulders, her expression serious. "You're awake," she said softly. I wanted to check on you." Elias gave her a small nod. "Thanks. The alien medics are fast, I'll give them that." She smiled faintly, but there was worry in her eyes. "Captain Grant, last night, why did you risk your life for me? You didn't even know me." Elias looked out the window, the city below glittering like stars. "I know enough to know what's right," he said simply. "No one should get hurt if I can stop it. That's all." Lyra studied him, her head tilted. "Humans, you're strange. Brave, but strange. I don't think anyone here would have done what you did." Elias shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe it's just what we do when we care." He stopped, noticing her eyes widen. "I didn't mean, never mind." Before they could continue, the door opened again, this time with authority. Queen Valara entered, her golden robes shimmering in the sunlight. She looked at Elias, her expression unreadable. "Captain Grant," she said, her voice steady, "you are well enough to speak. Come with me." Elias stood slowly, testing his shoulder. "Yes, Your Majesty," he said, following her. The queen led him through the palace halls, past grand halls filled with statues of Zephora's rulers, past tapestries depicting famous battles, past guards and servants who stared curiously at the human walking among them. Finally, they arrived at a smaller, more private room. It was simple compared to the grand halls outside. Just a round table, a few chairs, and windows that looked over the city. Valara gestured for Elias to sit. "Captain Grant, last night you acted with courage. That is uncommon, even among humans. You risked your life to save my daughter." Elias nodded, unsure where this was going. "I was just doing my job." "No," the queen said firmly. "You were doing more than your job. You chose to act. That makes a difference. That is why I am here, to ensure you understand the responsibility you now have." Elias leaned back, crossing his arms. Responsibility? Yes, Valara said, her gaze sharp. You will remain in the palace, not as a guest, not as a visitor, but as the princess's personal protector. You will stay until I decide you may leave. Elias blinked. He had expected gratitude, maybe a reward, but an order to stay. Your Majesty, I'm a free agent. I don't belong in a palace. You may be a free agent, human, Valara interrupted. But your actions have consequences. Political enemies are watching. They see your bravery and some will see it as a threat. You staying here ensures my daughter's safety and shows our people that courage is rewarded. Elias studied her. He could feel the weight of her words. This wasn't just about protection, it was a statement. And in the palace, statements could make or break lives. Lyra stepped forward, her eyes soft but determined. Captain Grant, I trust you. I want you to stay too. Not because my mother says so, but because I believe you will keep me safe. Elias looked at her, feeling the warmth of her trust. It was rare, even on Earth, for someone to believe in him so completely. I'll stay, he said slowly. But I'll do it my way. Don't expect me to follow every rule here. The Queen studied him, then nodded once. I would not expect anything less. But understand this, human. Your life is no longer entirely your own. You serve a purpose here now. Accept it and you may find rewards beyond what you imagine. Resist it, and the palace can be a dangerous place. Elias swallowed hard. He had faced danger before, but something about this palace felt different. There was power here, politics and secrets, and yet he felt alive in a way he hadn't felt in years. Over the next few days, Elias settled into his new role. The palace was enormous, more complex than he had imagined. Hallways twisted in ways that seemed to defy logic. Gardens floated on terraces, and servants moved with quiet efficiency, always watching, always waiting. Elias spent his mornings training in the courtyard, practicing combat moves against holographic opponents the palace provided. He found that the aliens' technology was different from anything he had seen. Their weapons were precise, their movements fluid, and their armor almost impossible to pierce. Yet he adapted, learning quickly. Humans were known for their ingenuity, and he relied on it more than brute strength. In the afternoons, he walked with Lyra through the palace gardens. She was curious about Earth, about humans, and asked endless questions. He answered honestly, sharing stories of his home world, of mountains, oceans, cities, and deserts. She listened with fascination, sometimes laughing, sometimes frowning at the strange ways humans lived. You humans take risks for so many reasons, she said one day, walking beside him among glowing plants. Sometimes for love, sometimes for honor, sometimes for nothing at all. Why? Elias thought carefully. Sometimes. We do it because it's the right thing. Sometimes because it matters. And sometimes because if we don't, someone else will get hurt. Lyra nodded, her eyes thoughtful. I like that. It's simple and yet powerful. But palace life was not all calm. Elias quickly noticed subtle tensions. Some Zephyrin nobles whispered when he walked by, glances sharp and suspicious. Certain guards watched him with skepticism. One noble even approached the Queen, quietly questioning why a human was given such authority. Elias didn't confront them. He observed, noting their movements, their expressions, their hidden agendas. He had learned long ago that sometimes the greatest victories came from patience and awareness, not fighting. One evening, as Elias walked the corridors, he noticed a group of men speaking in hushed tones, glancing around nervously. Their uniforms marked them as palace staff, but something about their manner screamed danger. He edged closer, listening. The human, one whispered. He cannot stay. The Queen is foolish. The princess, she trusts him too much. He must be removed. Elias's jaw tightened. He knew threats could come from anywhere, not just obvious enemies. The palace was full of secrets, and people were willing to risk everything for power. He filed the information in his mind. Later that night, in his quarters, he cleaned his gear, thinking. Staying here, he murmured, is going to be harder than I thought. But if anyone tries to harm the princess, they'll regret it. He wasn't just a mercenary anymore. He was a shield, and he intended to be the best the palace had ever seen. Days passed, and Elias began to earn the quiet respect of the palace staff. He helped a young alien child who had fallen from a terrace, used quick thinking to stop a fire in the kitchens, and even mediated a small dispute between two nobles. Each action, though small, showed that humans were capable of bravery, intelligence, and empathy. Slowly, the whispers of doubt began to fade, replaced by cautious admiration. Princess Lyra continued to observe him. She saw how he treated everyone with fairness, how he never sought praise, and how he carried himself with quiet strength. She began to trust him more than she had expected. One evening, she approached him in the palace garden. "You've changed things here," she said softly. "Not just for me, for everyone. People are starting to see humans differently because of you." Elias shrugged. "I just do what I can. That's all," she smiled faintly. "It's more than that. You're special, Captain Grant. And I think I'm beginning to understand why my mother wanted you here." Elias felt a strange warmth. He wasn't used to praise, especially from royalty. But he also felt the weight of responsibility growing heavier. He had chosen to stay. And now he had to prove that he deserved to be trusted, not just by the queen or the princess, but by the entire palace. The palace of Zephora was a labyrinth of corridors, gardens, and halls, each more magnificent than the last. Statues of past rulers lined the walls, and tapestries told stories of battles, alliances, and betrayals. To outsiders, it was a place of beauty and elegance. But to Captain Elias Grant, it was also a place of quiet danger. Every glance, every whisper could carry hidden meaning. Elias had been in the palace for a week now, officially the princess's protector. He trained during the mornings, patrolled during the afternoons, and spent evenings with Lyra, helping her understand Earth customs, stories, and even small combat techniques. He had begun to appreciate the strange harmony of the palace, the blend of tradition, technology, and strict rules. Yet the tension in the air never fully left him. One morning, Elias was walking through a hallway lined with glowing panels when a pair of Zephyran nobles stopped him. They were tall, thin, with sharp angular features and eyes like polished gems glinting with suspicion. "You, human," one said, his voice low and carefully polite. "Do you realize the position you occupy here is unusual?" Elias raised an eyebrow. "Unusual, yes. Dangerous, maybe. But necessary, I think." The other noble's lips tightened. "It is dangerous for you and for our traditions. Our people do not usually place such trust in outsiders. Your presence disrupts the natural order of this palace." Elias leaned casually against the wall, watching their expressions carefully. Disruptions are not always bad. Sometimes they make people stronger. The nobles exchanged a look, clearly irritated that he dared speak so freely. "The queen has made her decision," the first one said, voice clipped. "But some of us—" Elias's hand rested on the hilt of his sidearm, though he didn't draw it. "Careful," he said calmly. "I'm here to protect the princess. That includes from anyone who wants to harm her, directly or indirectly." The nobles stepped back, masks of civility hiding their anger. "We will see, human. We will see." As they walked away, Elias could feel the undercurrent of danger. Politics in Zephora's court was a game of shadows and subtle moves. One misstep could be fatal, not just for him but for the princess. Later that day, Lyra found him in the garden, practicing hand-to-hand combat against a holographic opponent. "You're worrying too much about the nobles," she said, watching him move with precise, powerful strikes. "They talk, but they do not act. At least not openly." Elias paused, catching his breath. "Some threats are quiet, Lyra. The ones who whisper and smile often hurt the most. I've learned to notice them." She frowned. "I never realized protecting me could be so complicated. I thought it was about stopping attacks and danger in front of me." "It's more than that," Elias said. "Protection isn't just about stopping blades. It's about seeing the danger before it reaches you, and stopping it quietly without anyone noticing." Lyra's eyes widened. "I see why my mother wants you here. You're different." "Different enough to survive," Elias said with a small grin. The next day brought evidence of that danger. While walking through the palace corridors, Elias noticed a servant moving hurriedly, glancing nervously around. Something about the way the servant moved, too fast, too careful, made Elias follow. The servant ducked into a storage room. Elias paused, listening. Inside, the servant spoke hurriedly into a small communication device. "The human is too clever. We must wait for the right moment. Yes, he cannot see us." Elias's jaw tightened. Clearly, the whispers among the nobles were not empty. Someone was plotting, and they had spies inside the palace itself. Later, he reported to Queen Valara in her private chambers. She listened quietly, her expression unreadable. "You have discovered a plot," she said finally. "Do you know who is behind it?" "I don't," Elias admitted. "But there are people watching us, waiting. I've seen the nobles whispering and servants acting strangely. Someone will try something and soon. Valara's eyes narrowed. I see, then you must be vigilant. You are not just protecting Lyra, you are protecting the crown itself. Elias nodded. Understood, Your Majesty. That evening, Lyra approached him as he sat near the palace fountain, watching the water glow under the alien moonlight. Do you ever get tired of being careful all the time? She asked. Elias shook his head. No, this is my job. And it's not just my job. I care about keeping people safe. She sat beside him. I do too. But I never realized how much danger there is, even when nothing seems to be happening. Exactly, Elias said. The quiet times are when you need to pay the most attention. People often make mistakes when they think everything is calm. Lyra nodded slowly, her eyes thoughtful. I'm glad you're here. I don't know what I'd do without you. Elias smiled faintly. You'd do fine. You're strong, but strength doesn't hurt to have on your side. A week later, the palace faced its first real test. An urgent alarm rang through the halls. Elias and the guards rushed to the main audience chamber, where a masked intruder had slipped past the outer defenses. The intruder carried a strange device that emitted a blue energy pulse, designed to knock down anyone in its path. Elias acted instinctively. He grabbed Lyra, pulling her to safety behind a pillar. The device fired, but Elias's quick reflexes allowed him to deflect the blast with his forearm. Sparks flew and the chamber shook. The intruder advanced, but Elias had anticipated this. Using his training, he moved with agility and precision, avoiding the blasts while disarming the intruder. Within moments, the palace security apprehended the masked figure. Lyra stared at him, awe in her eyes. You knew exactly what to do, she whispered. Elias dusted himself off, breathing heavily. Humans are good at thinking fast, but luck helps too. Queen Valara arrived moments later, her expression serious but approving. Captain Grant, your vigilance has prevented disaster. Once again, you prove why you must remain here. Elias nodded. I'll do what I can, Your Majesty. Always. That night, Elias reflected on the events. Court life was dangerous in ways he hadn't fully understood. Blades and weapons were one thing, but whispers, plots, and hidden agendas were far more treacherous. Yet he also realized something important. Humans had a way of adapting, of seeing solutions where others saw only problems. His ingenuity was his strength, and Zephora's people had yet to see its full potential. Lyra entered quietly, sitting across from him. You don't just protect me, she said softly. You teach me too. About courage, about thinking, about seeing danger before it comes. Elias met her gaze. You're learning fast, and you have your own strengths, Lyra. You're smart, brave, and clever. That's why I trust you, and why I'll keep trusting you. She smiled faintly, then leaned back, watching the glow of the palace lights. I think people will start to see humans differently because of you. Elias looked at her, considering. Maybe. Or maybe they'll always doubt us. But one thing is certain, humans survive. We find ways. And sometimes, we thrive where others would fail. Lyra's eyes sparkled. I hope my people are ready to see that. Elias gave a small smile. They will be, eventually, and I'll be here to help them see it. The palace was not safe. Court intrigue was just beginning, and enemies hid in the shadows. But Elias knew he could face them. Humans had survived worse than this, and he was determined to show Zyphora why. As the night deepened, the lights of the palace shimmered like stars, reflecting in the calm waters of the fountains. Elias sat in quiet contemplation, ready for whatever came next. The game of power, loyalty, and survival had begun, and he was prepared to play it on his own terms. The palace of Zyphora had grown quiet as the suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deep shades of red and violet. But quiet in the palace did not mean safe. Captain Elias Grant knew this better than anyone. Each shadow, each whispered conversation could hide a danger, and he had learned to trust his instincts. It began with subtle signs. A guard stationed near the royal treasury failed to report a suspicious figure moving through the halls. A delivery droid brought in a crate marked as food, but Elias noticed the seams had been tampered with. Something was brewing, a plot bigger than last week's minor schemes or whispered threats. He brought the matter to Queen Valara in her private chambers. She listened silently as he described the oddities, her expression darkening. You think this is an organized attack? She asked. Yes, Your Majesty, Elias replied. Not just one person. Someone is planning something major. They have inside help, and it's closer than anyone expects. The Queen's gaze hardened. I feared as much. You have served us well, human, but now, your role becomes more dangerous. I want you to uncover this plot and stop it before it reaches the princess or me. Elias nodded. I'll do it, but I'll need access to certain areas and someone who knows the palace inside and out. You may have my full cooperation, Valara said. Lyra trusts you and she will assist where she can. But be careful. Trust is a dangerous thing in the wrong hands. That night, Elias and Princess Lyra moved quietly through the palace corridors. Lyra had been learning how to observe, how to notice things others overlooked. Together they checked security feeds, listened for unusual activity, and examined hidden passages. This is incredible, Lyra whispered, as they slipped through a shadowed hallway. I had no idea the palace had so many secret tunnels. Elias nodded. The palace was built centuries ago. They never expected humans to be clever enough to use them. But clever humans adapt. Their first break came when they noticed a small device hidden in a maintenance panel. It was a communication transmitter, sending encrypted messages to an unknown location. Someone is coordinating with outsiders, Elias said, examining it. This is bigger than just a palace feud. They are planning a coup. Lyra's eyes widened. A coup against my mother? Yes, Elias said. And if we don't stop it, you and your mother could be in danger. The investigation led them deep into the palace's lower levels, into tunnels that smelled of oil and damp stone. They discovered crates of advanced alien weapons hidden in the storage rooms, blasters, energy shields, and small drones capable of attacking from above. The conspirators had been preparing for months. This is serious, Elias whispered. They plan to strike fast and hard. If they reach the throne room during the next council meeting, the palace could fall before anyone reacts. Lyra shivered. We have to warn my mother. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. Not yet. If they know we're onto them, they'll change plans. We need proof and strategy first. Over the next 2 days, Elias and Lyra worked in secrecy. They traced the communication signals to a hidden chamber beneath the palace gardens. Inside, a group of masked figures, nobles, palace staff, and a few outsiders were plotting, their voices low but filled with excitement. Elias studied them silently. Their plan was daring. They intended to use the next royal gala, an event celebrating the planet's founding, as the moment to strike. With advanced weapons and careful timing, they would attempt to seize the queen and declare themselves rulers. We can't let this happen, Lyra whispered. No, Elias said. We need a plan to stop them without exposing ourselves too soon. They cannot know we are aware. Using his knowledge of tactics and human ingenuity, Elias devised a strategy. They would let the conspirators proceed with part of their plan, then intervene at the perfect moment to neutralize the threat. Timing, distraction, and precision would be key. The night of the gala arrived. The palace glittered with lights, the air filled with music and laughter. Aliens from across Sephora attended, unaware of the danger lurking among them. Elias and Lyra moved through the crowd, watching for unusual behavior. The conspirators made their move. A small group slipped toward the throne room, weapons concealed under their robes. Elias followed silently, signaling Lyra to stay calm and alert. They reached the chamber just as the attackers prepared to breach the doors. With a sudden, coordinated move, Elias struck first. Using a combination of hand-to-hand combat and quick reflexes, he disarmed the lead conspirator and neutralized several others before they could react. Lyra assisted by using her knowledge of palace layouts to block escape routes and prevent reinforcements. The confrontation was intense. Energy pulses flew, doors slammed, and alarms echoed through the halls. Yet Elias's human ingenuity, using shadows, leverage, and the environment, gave them the advantage. One by one, the attackers were subdued, trapped, or forced to retreat. When the last conspirator was secured, Elias looked at Lyra. She was breathing heavily, but smiling. We did it, she said, awe in her eyes. Yes, Elias replied, his heart still pounding. But this is just one attempt. There may be others. We have to remain vigilant. Queen Valara arrived moments later, flanked by palace guards. She observed the aftermath, her eyes sharp, then rested on Elias. You have done more than I expected, she said. You saved the palace, my daughter, and my people. You are more than a protector, Captain Grant. You are a shield for us all. Elias bowed slightly. I only did what I had to do, Your Majesty. Lyra stepped forward, her expression proud. You didn't just protect me, Elias, you outsmarted them. You used your mind and your strength. I've never seen anyone do that before. Elias felt a warmth he had rarely experienced. Humans were often underestimated, especially on alien worlds, but here, his courage and ingenuity had made a real difference. He realized that this was more than a job now. It was a chance to prove that humanity could rise above expectations, even on a world far from Earth. The following days were tense but productive. Elias worked with palace security to improve defenses, train guards, and create protocols to detect future threats. The Queen praised him for his foresight, while Lyra continued to learn from him, absorbing strategies, observations, and lessons about courage. But even as peace seemed to settle over the palace, Elias knew better. The plot had been significant, coordinated, and daring. Others might still try. Humans were resilient, inventive, and adaptable. But so were the enemies that now knew how capable they were. One night, Elias stood alone on the palace balcony, staring at the glowing city below. Ships flew silently, lights twinkling in the darkness. He thought of Earth, of the battles and dangers he had faced, and realized that humanity's strength was not just in weapons or power. It was in courage, ingenuity, and the willingness to face impossible odds. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Lyra. Thinking about what comes next? She asked softly. Always, Elias said. But humans, we adapt, we survive. And sometimes we even thrive. Lyra smiled faintly. I'm glad you're here, Elias. More than I can say. Elias looked at her, understanding something profound. Protecting her was no longer just duty. It was a mission he believed in, a purpose that mattered beyond anything he had imagined. Thank you, Lyra, he said quietly. For trusting me. For letting me help, the princess nodded. Always, Elias, always. The palace of Xiphora was alive with light and music once more. The previous threats had been neutralized, conspirators captured, and the city's trust in its royal family restored. Yet the atmosphere was different now. The presence of a human, Captain Elias Grant, had changed the palace forever. Where once there had been doubt and suspicion, now there was respect, awe, and even admiration. Elias stood in the main hall, watching as Queen Valara received ambassadors from distant planets. He had been invited to observe the proceedings, not as a guard, but as a witness. He had earned his place here, though it still felt strange to him. Humans were still rare in Xiphora, still underestimated, yet here he was, a symbol of courage and ingenuity. Lyra appeared at his side, her silver hair catching the light. You're not just a hero, she said softly. You're a part of this palace now. Everyone knows it, Elias smiled faintly. I'm still just a human, he said. But humans, we try hard, we adapt, and sometimes we surprise everyone. Lyra laughed lightly. You've surprised me more than anyone. Before he could respond, Queen Valara approached. Her golden robe shimmered and her gaze was both stern and warm. Captain Grant, she said, you have done more than protect my daughter. You have protected this palace, its people, and the trust they place in me. For that you deserve recognition. Elias inclined his head respectfully. I was only doing my duty, Your Majesty. Valara shook her head. No, it was more than duty. It was courage, foresight, and loyalty, traits rare in any species. And yet, you display them naturally. She turned to the assembled courtiers and palace staff. Let all who witness this know that Captain Elias Grant, a human, has saved Xiphora from threats both external and internal. His actions honor not only himself but the spirit of cooperation between our peoples. He is a symbol of bravery that transcends species. A wave of applause filled the hall. Many courtiers bowed deeply to Elias, some with hesitation at first, then with genuine respect. Guards saluted. Even the nobles who had doubted him now regarded him with cautious admiration. Elias felt a strange warmth in his chest. Humans were often judged by strength, cunning, or appearance, but here it was courage and ingenuity that earned him respect. He realized that the Queen's acknowledgement was more than a title. It was acceptance. Lyra stepped closer, her eyes shining. You've done what no one else could, Elias. You've changed how my people see humans. Elias smiled. I just did what I thought was right. That's all any human can do. Days later, life in the palace returned to a quieter rhythm. Elias continued training the royal guards, sharing human tactics and strategies. He taught them about improvisation, quick thinking, and working together under pressure. Many Zifferans were surprised at how effective these human methods were. Lyra practiced alongside him, learning both combat and leadership. She admired Elias's patience and skill, and more than that, his ability to stay calm under pressure. Slowly, the princess grew more confident in herself and in her people. But palace life was not without challenges. Whispers of distant plots, rival houses, and political unrest were never far away. Elias knew that danger could appear at any moment. And yet he felt ready. He had proven himself capable of handling threats stronger, faster, and more cunning than most could imagine. One evening, Elias and Lyra stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The twin moons reflected in the water of the palace fountains, and distant ships moved gracefully through the sky. The city glimmered like a field of stars, alive with energy and life. "Do you ever think about home?" Lyra asked, her voice quiet. Elias looked at the horizon, remembering Earth, mountains, oceans, forests, and cities. "I do, but home is more than a place. It's the people you protect, the people who trust you, and the choices you make." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. "I understand. And I'm glad you're here, with us." Elias felt a quiet satisfaction. He had chosen to stay not because he was ordered to, but because he believed in his mission. And now, because he believed in the people he was protecting. Humans often thrived when they had purpose, and this was a purpose worth everything. A week later, the palace held a ceremony in Elias's honor. Queen Valara stood before the gathered citizens and foreign dignitaries. "Today we recognize not only bravery but the spirit of cooperation between worlds. Captain Elias Grant has shown that courage knows no boundaries. He has proven that humans are not just guests in our galaxy. They are allies, friends, and protectors." Elias stepped forward, bowing respectfully. "I am honored, Your Majesty," he said. "But I did not act alone. Princess Lyra helped me see what was happening, and the palace guards and staff acted with courage as well. Humans are strong, but strength is nothing without trust and teamwork." The Queen smiled. "Wisely said, human. Today we honor you as a symbol of hope, courage, and unity. You may take your place among those who protect Zephora, not just as a human, but as one of us." Applause echoed through the hall. Aliens and humans alike acknowledged him, some bowing, others offering gestures of respect he had never seen before. Elias realized then that his journey was not just about survival. It was about inspiring others, showing them what humans could do when given a chance. In the weeks that followed, Elias settled into his role more fully. He patrolled the palace, trained guards, and advised the Queen on security matters. But more than that, he began to form bonds with the people of Zephora. Children who once gawked at him now ran up to him for lessons in combat or stories of Earth. Courtiers who had doubted him sought his counsel. And Princess Lyra continued to learn, growing more confident in herself and her leadership. One morning, as Elias walked through the palace gardens, Lyra joined him. She carried a small device, a communication link from Earth. "It seems your people are reaching out," she said, smiling. "They want to know more about your adventures and your successes here," Elias chuckled. "Humans are curious, always reaching for more. I suppose it's good that my story is getting attention. Maybe they'll understand what we're capable of." Lyra looked at him, her eyes full of respect and admiration. "They already do. And so do we." Elias felt a quiet pride. Humans had survived countless dangers on their home world. But here, on a distant planet, they had proven themselves once again. Courage, ingenuity, and determination were universal, and humans embodied them fully. Months later, the palace faced new challenges, as it always would. But Elias was ready. With the Queen's trust, the princess's confidence, and the loyalty of the palace staff, he knew that humans could face threats greater than themselves and still prevail. One evening, Elias stood on the highest balcony looking at the stars. He thought of Earth, of the adventures yet to come, and of the future he was helping to shape on Zephora. For the first time in his life, he felt a true sense of belonging, not just as a mercenary or a protector, but as a part of something larger, a story of courage, hope, and the human spirit. Lyra joined him silently, her presence comforting. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "About what's next," Elias replied. Humans have a way of rising to challenges, of surprising everyone, and I think this is just the beginning. There are more adventures, more dangers, and more opportunities to show what we can do. She smiled, her silver hair glowing in the moonlight. Then we'll face them together. Elias nodded. Together. The palace lights shimmered below, the city of Zephora alive with energy. The galaxy stretched infinitely beyond, filled with mysteries, challenges, and wonders, and Captain Elias Grant, a human far from home, stood ready to face them all. Humans were strong, clever, and brave, and now, far from Earth, they had proven it once more. The adventure was over, for now. But the story of humans and of Elias was only just beginning.